it was then Hollow, the younger Hollow said they just don't. My son told me that all these houses, all the things that goes to wonder. I don't know, we shouldn't talk about it live. What's somewhere in America? So I can't. I shouldn't have said anything. So Pesach or something. Shiur in Pesach. Was it New Orleans somewhere like? We're up to you. Gimel Amud Aleph. We had Machlik Somer and Yehuda in our Mishnah regarding Erev Pesach, how long you're forbidden from eating chametz. If you remember Machlik Somer and Yehuda, we had yesterday towards the end of the day. Rav Nachman came along and told us that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda, which we questioned. Meicha teis halacha should be like Rav Yehuda, not like Rav Meir. So first the Gemara said because you've got no raya because there's not a stam Mishnah. So now the Gemara says another cheshbon. Bibo is Eimer. It's about 10 lines from the top. And the Gemara is going to bring a brisa that supports the contention that what? That we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Tani says like this Tana. The Tanya Abbas is Shabbos like this year. With the 14th of Nisan and the 4th on the Shabbos. Shabbos have to get rid of everything before Shabbos. Oh, that's right. The Sofin Tvumos, Tameos, Teluyos, V'Torah. It's going to go through this in great detail eventually. But the halacha is you don't normally burn Tvumah. There's a mitzvah to look after Tvumah. But here you've got no choice because if you're going to keep your tumah, you have nothing to eat. So you have to burn toy tumah, tome tumah, and suffik tumah. Tumah is the suffik tumah. So leave over from toy mozel. So there's only 2 meals. Why only 2 meals? Well, that's shalosh shudas. So Rashi says because Erev Pesach you're not allowed to eat in order to be able to have an matzah of the appetite. And it was short of Rashi. How can you say such a thing? Anyway, you can't have 3 meals because once it comes to the 4th hour of the day or the 5th hour of the day, and Shalosh is in the afternoon, you're going to have chometz, you can't eat it. So some say Rashi meant that even let's say chometz noikshan, other kinds of things which are not proper chometz, etc. Anyway, you only keep 2 meals. Kedei lechol ad arba shois. Oh, kedei lechol ad arba shois. Who's the shitta is that? Is Rabbi Yehuda or Meir? Rabbi Yehuda, that's why we pass like Rabbi Yehuda. They disagreed with me about one aspect. Don't burn Torah tumah. Maybe somebody will come on Shabbos and come to eat it. He's been looking all day of Shabbos, looking for something to eat, and nobody wants to eat it. So he has to burn it. Maybe there's kohanim outside the town, and they're sleeping there, and on Shabbos they'll come in. According to you, after Suffolk Tomei should also not be burnt. Why not? Maybe Eliyahu will come and make a toy, and therefore what will happen is, so you shouldn't burn anything because maybe Eliyahu will come, and Eliyahu will say, what? Oh, very good, and you're burning, exactly. So you can't burn either Suffolk. Eliyahu will not come today, and he will not come on Erev Yom Tov. Why not? Because we're busy preparing for Shabbos and Yom Tov. So while you're peeling the potatoes or going shopping, you have to be aware that what you're doing is so important that it's more important than Eliyahu coming. Are you aware of that? There's a mikivega about it. Somebody is going shopping on Erev Shabbos. That if a person would know the Eilam Haba he gets for the effort it would require, he would do it with a huge amount of simcha. So you must remember, the Navi will not come on there of Shabbos and Yom Tov because it will disturb your shopping. You're going to standing in the queue there. So Gemara says, we pass like this man Doma. We pass like him. Now, we pass like him. Now he said 2 things. One is that you have to finish eating by the 4th hour, which is like a Yehuda, and another one is you burn everything, even Torah. And we don't rely on the fact that Kohanim may come. So Gemara says, "My love, afilu lechol." Even regarding the second halacha of eating within 4 hours is like a Yehuda, so that's why we pass like a Yehuda. We're only passing like him regarding this other aspect that you have to burn the tumah tahira. But the Gabi eating within 4 hours, maybe we don't pass like him, and therefore again you've got no right that we pass like a Yehuda. The Maisa we do pass like a Yehuda because Rav said so, but where Rav got it from is not clear. From this price, it's not 100% proof. And from the previous Mishnah was also not a proof. So Meister Moses, even Rebbe holds like a Yehuda. Why? Meister Bottom Echad is a story. Can you imagine the story? He left chometz. Diskia was a double bag. The olden days, if you wanted to carry well on a donkey, you made like 2 bags attached with a little rope, in Shabbos, and you'd put it on the donkey and balance each other. So he left him that kind of bag with chometz. And mice were starting to eat from it. He saw there's loads of chometz. The first hour of Erev Pesach, which is about 6 o'clock in the morning, Amalei Hampton, he said to him, wait still. Maybe the owner will come back and enjoy his chametz. Shneir came back to him. Can you imagine Pesach, the Rav getting these questions, and the person himself is trying to get rid of his chametz, and he's got this bag of chametz that somebody left him. What can he do? There's a mitzvah of looking. He promised to look after it. He has to look after it. He told him, go and sell it in the marketplace. He didn't allow him to eat it himself. He said, go and sell it in the marketplace. Right. Wait a second. The 5th hour, according to Rabbi Meir, what can you do? Anybody's allowed to eat it. Right. According to Rabbi Yehuda, only allowed to get pleasure, but not allowed to eat it. So the fact that he told him to go and sell it in the marketplace is a right to what? Very good. It's a right to Rabbi Yehuda. Because according to Rabbi Meir, what should he have said to him? Don't eat it yourself. Eat it yourself. He must have said to go him for Rabbi Yehuda. No, he meant sell it to Yidden like a Meir. If the whole idea was selling it to Yid because he's allowed to eat it, let's eat him himself.
Well, I'd have to give the money to the person.
Yes, okay, but either way, he's going to give the money to the person. No, I leave you a bag of chametz. Comes out of Pesach. So what are you going to do with it?
If it gets past the time, I'll burn it. Right? But if you're telling me to sell it,
yes,
then I'll have to give that money because it's not my chametz to sell. I'm selling it to you because otherwise
he's selling it to another Yid, right?
Yes, but then I've got the money. It doesn't belong to me. The money.
That's right. Belongs to him. Very good. So what's the nafkamina? Whether you go to the marketplace and sell it to another Yid? Why not? No, eat it and pay the value. Eat it and pay the value.
Why would you have to pay? Going into
no, because you could have sold it to another Yid. It's easier to eat it yourself. I leave you a slice of bread, Pesach. What are you going to do with it? Go to the marketplace, take you to ages to get a pound for it. So therefore, rather eat it yourself and give me the pound. Why did he tell him to go and sell it? Is a raya that we're going b'shittas Rabbi Yehuda, that you're not allowed to eat it once it's the 5th out. So the only choice he had was to sell it to a goy, which is allowed to. Says Mo says no. Mishum chashoda, the Tana Gabor stuck up to the first wide line. She'en lemanim. Now there's 2 kinds of things in order to say There was people that used to collect every week money, and there were people tamchud used to collect every day food. And there were different people entitled to one, different people entitled to the other. So you should collect once a week money. So then at the end of the week, you'd use the money to buy food for the people. And then you'd give out money. And the tamchu was every day you go around with a bowl and collect food for people. So what happens is, Gabit stock are those who've got money collecting. They would give out, in olden days, money exchange thing was not like nowadays. It was literally £100 is £100. It was more complicated because copper coins would get ruined, silver coins could get rubbed away. So therefore, you'd have to go to a bank, a special bank, and exchange it depending on the quality of the coin. You can't change your own coins. You can't go home and change it yourself. Why can't you go and change it yourself? No, change the coppers. You went around the town collecting money, and you got lots of coppers from people, and then you were planning to give it to the poor. Happened to be that week there were no poor people in town. So you don't want to keep coppers because coppers go bad. So you want to change them into silver coins. So now, who should you change with silver coins to? Not to yourself. Why? No, that's because we'll say that maybe you'll be good to yourself and give yourself, like for example, let's say you get dollars and you to change it into pounds. You might not use a good rate, and therefore we don't allow it to yourself. Same thing. If you've got let's say they collected bowl of food and they've got now a bit of rice, a bit of potatoes, a bit of bread, and now there's no poor people to give out the food to, so they shouldn't sell it to themselves and eat it. Rather, they should sell it to somebody else. Why? There's a mitzvah to do things in a way that nobody should be choished do. You told us explicitly that Rabbi Yehuda Nossi told him, sell it to a goy, like Rabbi Yehuda, that it is asa ba'ano, and that's why he couldn't sell it to a yid. So it's another right that we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, and indeed we pass like Rabbi Yehuda. So Rashi points out that why did we say to Rabbi Yosef something if Rabbi Yosef himself said it? What's the answer? Why did Rabbi Bava need to tell him what Rabbi Yosef said? Rabbi Yosef forgot. Why did Rabbi Yosef forget? Rabbi Yosef got not well in the middle of his life and forgot his learning, so many times he had to be reminded of statements that he made himself. Who does it go like the shit of Rebbe that you have to sell something which is going to get ruined? Who said it's a mitzvah to sell something which is going to get ruined? This, that. If I give you food to look after, even if you see that they're going to get destroyed, you mustn't touch them. Why? Because since it's my food and I asked you to look after them, I want my food back. You go and sell it to give me £10. I don't want it. I want my food. The basin, you have to sell it in basin. Why do you have to sell it in basin? Oh, what? You should get the right price. What do you say? Yeah, you should get correct price. But they are Shavas Aveda. Omale Abaya, so you see that's it's like Mishum Gamliel, because according to the Chachamim, you don't sell it. According to the Chachamim, you keep it. So therefore, this shit of maybe that you should sell it, it's like Mishum Gamliel. Omale Abaya, no. Well, we learned about that Mishnah. If they're missing the normal amount, that is the machloikas. Since it's only losing a normal amount, the mice are coming and taking away. In those days, it was normal. If you had produce, every year the Mishnah tells us what was normal for the produce to go down by. So since it's a normal amount, so that's the machloikas. Everybody agrees that if it's getting lost more than normal, that means there's more mice than usual, and there's more mold than usual, everybody agrees you should sell it to Beis Din. So don't say that maybe he was told him to sell it. Everybody would agree you should sell it. Because this chametz, if he waits another hour, will be worth nothing. So therefore, everybody agrees you should sell it. That's the kasha that if we talk about it's getting lost the normal amount, why would the Shulchan say sell it? Everybody knows it's going to get lost. It's a normal thing to happen. So Tesa says, interesting, complicated cheshbon, that it's getting lost in a month what it's normally getting lost in a year. So that's the machlekes Shulchan Gamliel and the Chachamim. Shulchan Gamliel says, sell it because it's getting lost quicker. Chachamim say, no, he knew that it's going to get lost in a year that amount, so therefore he's not that upset, rather keep it. Okay. So the next Mishnah we're discussing that what they used to do is they used to make a sign to tell people when they're allowed to eat, when they're allowed to get pleasure, and when they have to sell it. So the Mishnah told us there are two challahs which they put on the bench. On the bench, on the seat of the bench. So he said to him, is the purpose of putting the challahs there to hide them? Of course not. The purpose of putting the challahs there was to declare publicly that now is the time to get rid of your chametz or to eat it. For the agaga, it's to read rather not al-gav on the seat of the bench, but rather on the roof of the bench, on the roof of the bench, meaning that there used to be benches around the harabais, not in the azov, but around the harabais. And on top of the benches was a kind of like a bus stop where you have benches in the bus stop, but you also have around the bus stop, you have a shelter, so you have like a roof on top. So there's a roof around the entire harabais. So they put the loaves of bread on the roof that everybody could see. And now it was a huge roof. Yes, very big. Now the Gemara now says, since we mentioned this, mentioned this a few times in Shas, that the benches in the Harabais were two rows of benches, one within the other. It was a double bench. Indeed, we have a price. Indeed, it had a double bench. It was like a higher bench and a lower bench, and on top of both benches, there was a roof. You should see some of the picture Mishnah, even have a picture of it. It was called istovnis, which means stov lifnim istov, a bench within a bench. Here we get to the whole thing. Mishnah says that you're going to put chalas on top of the roof to tell people that it's time to either burn the challah once you take it away, to burn your chametz, or to eat the chametz when they were both there, you were allowed to eat it. One were there, you're allowed to get pleasure. None were there, you had to burn it. Now the question is, which chalus psulos are you going to have? Chalus toida is when a person needs to be called toida, so he brings with it 40 loaves of bread, and it has to be eaten within a day and a night. And the Mishnah says they used to use posel ones. Now, what do you normally do with a posel chalus toida? Burn it. In fact, it was a mitzvah to burn it as soon as possible. The Gemara says, psulos v'chulu. Amai psulos. How would you get psulos? The Ran explains that my psulis is, well, how would you arrange that it should always be psulis? Every year on the Erev Pesach, you'd arrange that somebody would make a mistake with Korban Todah. Because there was a very lot of Korban Todah, we'll explain in a minute why. There would always be psul. Because there were 40 loaves, which is a lot to eat in the day and the night. And since there were so many, normally they'd give it to the Kohanim, but there were so many, the Kohanim couldn't eat it, and therefore there would always be possible because they would always become leaner. Why would there be so many? The Tanya. We don't bring a Korban Todah in Chagamatzis, and that's why we don't say Mizbel Yisoid on Chol Hamoed Pesach. If they chametz Shabbat, because go chametz. Pshita, what's the having that you shouldn't be Korban Todah on Pesach? How would you? You can't bring a Korban Todah on Pesach, so chametz. Even on the Erev Pesach, you're not allowed to bring a Korban Todah. And every year people try. Remember, don't say Mizbel Yisoid on Erev Pesach. Why don't you have a Korban Todah on Erev Pesach? Are you allowed to eat it? Because it shortens it, because you're going to be limited, because you're only going to be able to eat it for how many hours? Still a few hours, still chatzos. Once it's chatzos, you can't eat it. Because you're not allowed to eat kolchub. Now, every day it comes aliyah leregel. Most people arrive in Yerushalayim on the day before Pesach or 2 days before Pesach. And all the people that hadn't been to Yerushalayim for months and months needed to bring a Korban Todah. When would you bring a Korban Todah? If you're not well, if you come out of prison, or if you travel across the desert, etc. So everybody had to be a Korban Todah. They can't be good on Pesach, can't be good on Pesach. So when would everybody be in the Korban Todah? On the 13th. So you can imagine on 13th of Nisan, there were thousands and thousands of Korban Todah. And don't forget loads of psulos. And that's why, because, so everybody, they're bigger on the 13th of Nisan. Since there were so many people being a Korban Todah on the 13th of Nisan, you can imagine that Erev Pesach every year, there was Korban, there was Chalas Todah, which were possible. Then they'd have to burn them all. Now, Rabbi Yanai will go back and forth what Rabbi Yanai meant until the Maskana. And at every stage, there are questions to be asked. We don't have so much time, so we'll ask the questions that Gemara asked for this more. Rabbi Yanai first will start off saying that there were kosher Korbanos Todah. Oh. So, by the way, just to ask the questions, therefore, Tosis asks the question, bottom Tosis, if they were kosher, so how could you leave them around? If you left them around, the Kohanim should eat them. So it says it's going to some Gamliel that just like Truma you're allowed to eat later because Truma is more Kodesh, so Chalos Todah you're allowed to eat later. Since they were Kodesh, therefore it didn't matter. The first hour when everyone was allowed to eat that too. Then afterwards you had one, and then you would eat them mamish at the last minute, and then that way you wouldn't do a problem. Oh, it came to the fifth hour, you're not allowed to eat according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Korbanos Chalos Todah you were allowed to eat. Okay. Why were they called posel? You didn't shecht the Korban Zebach. Korban Todah is bread with a Zebach, you didn't shecht. What are you doing? Take the Korban Todah and shecht it. You lost the Korban. So let's find another one and shecht it. That means you will Korban Todah. And you lost the Korban and ran away. Shecht another one. Where you said that this is the bread of this Todah, where you depended one on the other. If a person says this is the Todah with its bread, you made them both together, and then you went and lost the bread, you could just bring another set of 40 loaves. Of the Todah, but if you lost the Korban, that means if you make the two dependent on each other, if you lose the bread, bring new bread. If you lose the Korban, you can't bring another Korban. Why? The bread is for the Korban, the Korban is not for the bread. Meaning, the Ikka mitzvah is the Korban. The bread is like the wrapping is like an extra. So if you lose the bread, you can bring more bread. But if you lost the Korban, you've lost the Ikka Korban. Since you've lost the Ikka Korban, you can't say we're bringing another Korban. It's a whole new thing. And the bread will become possible and you cannot use the bread. So therefore, according to this stage of the Gemara, we're talking about the Erev Pesach. Somebody bought a Korban Todah. He lost the sheep. And therefore now he can't bring another sheep because he said at the time when he was makdish them that this is the bread with its Korban. And since he lost the sheep, that the obvious question is, how did we arrange every single year that somebody should lose his Korban Todah sheep?
Chances are someone's going to lose it or not. People bring it.
What, every Pesach? Every Pesach?
Someone's going to lose it. How many
Yeah, it's worse because we're talking about the 14th of Nisan. What's somebody doing bringing a Korban Todah on 14th of Nisan anyway? It can't be that he lost it on the 13th because he lost it on the 13th. It would be possible because it's possible because it's past the time. It would talk about Shiur, but it's not past the time. So he's bringing it on the 14th of Nisan and he's lost the sheep. So it says a different question. But let's redeem the bread. But if kinu lechulin, the halacha is that you're allowed to redeem bread as long as you haven't shechted the korban. You shechted the korban, but you lost the blood, you spilt the blood. And since you spilt the blood, therefore now you can't redeem the bread. Uchaman karebi. Now the most suggests it's like Rebbe. There are two things that make the bread. There are two stages for the bread. Let's get this very clear. At the first stage, when you're makdish the bread as a Korban Todah, you cannot eat the bread. And in fact, you could redeem it because it's not yet royal to be mamish as a Korban. Once you shecht the Korban Todah and you sprinkle the blood, then the bread becomes not only kadosh, kedushas haguf, that you cannot redeem it, but in fact, it now becomes permitted to be eaten. Because what's happened is you've done the entire process of the Korban, so the Kohanim are entitled now to eat the bread. Now, in between that stage, between the shechting and the sprinkling of the blood, the bread has got double jeopardy. What's the double problem? You can't eat it because you haven't sprinkled the blood. But you can't redeem it because you've already started the process of kedusha. It's now got kedusha sakuf, not kedusha stomach. So the Gemara says that that's the kind of bread we're talking about, where you shechted it, and therefore you can't redeem it, but you can't eat it because you never sprinkled the blood. So that they make it kodesh one without the other. The Tanya Kivsei says you've got the same thing on Shavuos, so it's being shlamim on Shavuos, which were kodshei kodshim with bread, and that bread you made the kodesh. Case of Shochten Lishmon, if you shecht it with the right intentions, V'zag Dom Lishmon, Kiddush Alech, the bread becomes Kaddish. Shochten, and you can eat it. Kiddush Shochten Lishmon, Zag Dom Shelo Lishmon, Lo Kiddush Alechem, you can't eat it. Shochten Lishmon, Zag Dom Shelo Lishmon, Lechem Kaddish, Vein Kaddish, the Ve'ebi.
They had the bread at the end. Sprinkled the bread. What did they do? They ate it right at the end.
In this particular case, we're talking about we spilled the blood, so nobody could eat it. Because you shechted it correctly.
And you'll never be able to sprinkle it right.
And you'll never sprinkle it because you spilled the blood. And the halacha is that once you spill the blood, you can't get it from the floor. And we're talking about when the blood spurted out. So therefore, the next kind of blood you cannot use. So therefore, the halacha is that it's like shochton lishmon. And you did the shechita correctly. But the zvika was done incorrectly. So lechem kodesh v'nei kodesh. The Rebbe says, Rebbe, it's kodesh that you can't redeem it. V'nei kodesh that you can't eat it. And therefore, you're stuck. This bread was not used. No, of course not. So you're going to have the question, how did it happen every year? He says you can still redeem it because you haven't yet done his zvika lishmo. So we're not going like Rishon Gamliel because according to him, so we're not going like Rabbi Shimon because according to him, in such a situation, you would just do what? You would redeem the bread and start from scratch. So the Rabbi says no. I feel it him Rabbi Shimon. Let me like this. What happened was, we're talking about over here where you shechted it, caught the blood, and according to the father, that's from Shimon Yochai, once you've caught the blood, it's oimid lizoik, something which could be sprinkled, it's as if it's already been sprinkled. And therefore we said by Zvika and Shaloli Shmo, he says it's no good at all, it's not going to Kedusha. So the man explains that there's a big difference between when you did Zvika Shaloli Shmo and when you spilled the blood. When you did Zvika Shaloli Shmo, you've ruined the blood. And therefore it's not umid zoik, and therefore it's not kaddish. It's therefore you can still redeem it. But when you spilled the blood, where when you caught it, there was a moment that you could have done zvika. It's as if you've already done zvika, and therefore it's already completely. You can. What's the word for it? You can. It's become kaddish, and therefore you can't redeem it. Now, what's going on over here? We made it the whole kimta. We're talking about like this. We're talking about Erev Pesach. You bought a carbon toidah. And you didn't lose the carbon, but rather you shechted it and caught the blood and you spilled it. So he says, this interesting spot. He says, since there was such a desperate rush in the carbon toidah, there were thousands of kind of being in carbon toidah, and therefore they were confident that every year somebody would spill the blood. And therefore, because of all the jostling around, and therefore this is the bread they used. Why did we gain from all of this? Why didn't he just say what the Gemara said previously, that we bought carbon toidah on the 13th, and it was possible because of the fact that there's so many people couldn't eat the bread? Rabbi Chava asks this question. He answers that he held that such a carbon toidah, you'd have to burn the bread straight away. And you couldn't possibly wait for the 4th or 5th hour because there's a mitzvah to burn it immediately. And what are you doing using this bread as a simmer? The rest of the more is very easy. Everybody would eat it. When there was only one, you would wait and you weren't allowed to eat, but you were allowed to get pleasure. Ever you could burn it. They would take 2 cows and they would go on the Har HaZeisim. Teresa says they didn't actually plow on the Har HaZeisim because on Erev Pesach one's not allowed to plow because it's a time not to do malacha. But they looked like they were plowing. While everybody could see that they were plowing or pretending to plow, everybody would eat it. But one of them was taken away. That means either they relied on these 2 loaves of bread or on these 2 cows to remind themselves when you're allowed to eat, when you're allowed to get pleasure, and when you have to burn it. Okay, rush it a bit. That's a Friday for you. We're starting what's Shabbos from the Mishnah, Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph. Have a very, very, very good Shabbos.